and welcome back. And today we've got Caroline Rowland with us now. Caroline, in my eyes, is an EFT guru. She practices out at Wellington near Telford. She does various holistic therapies and has been teaching a long time, and has done some great work with the Healing Hands Network as well, working with victims of war. So I'll just hand straight over to Caroline. And Caroline, thank you so much for coming on and talking about how you've got to where you are now, because it's not been without its own share of troubles and concerns for your health. So what kind of child were you, and where were you brought up?
I'll start at the beginning. Well, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. What kind of child was I? Well, I was born in Cornwall, and Cornwall forever my home. We moved around a bit because my father was in the Fleet Air Arm, and then when I married young, I was 18. I was my husband was in the RAF then, so I've moved around, but always ended up back in Cornwall until here in Shropshire. I was always a very anxious child, but happy too. I had a lovely parents. Of course, my poor dad wasn't always there because he was in the Navy and on board ship. So maybe that was part of the anxiety and missing him and wanting to be near my mum. But I was always a daydreamer. Still am, happy living my happy fantasy world, and always with the nose in books or music. I absolutely loved music and played a couple of different instruments. Yeah, it's lovely. But I was apart from the anxiety, I was also had a very strong sense of right and wrong. And I would always stand up. I'd be the one there with hands on hips, standing up to the class bullies, asking why they'd been so mean and telling them that they shouldn't have done that, So, yeah, I guess that pretty much sums me up. Not an adventurous child. I like to be at home with my nose in a book near my mother, rather than being out climbing trees. It's my sister who did that.
And so the anxiety, if you were moving about a lot as a young one through in Cornwall and going to different schools, I mean, that would have been quite anxious for you as well, wondering what's the next school going to be like, or what are the next load of students going to be like.
It was, but you learn to fit in quickly. So I always had lots of friends, and always was able to get on well with people. And we moved around. We moved, at one time we lived in Scotland for a couple of years, in the northeast of Scotland. Then of course my accent was very different. So, you had to learn to fit in if you were different and get along with people. But I think it was really good for me, actually. But yes, I was anxious, but I think I would have been whether I'd stayed in one place or if I moved. But you learn, by moving around, you learn that people are the same no matter where you are, I think. We have slight differences no matter where you are, and even the difference between Scotland and England and Cornwall, in my eyes at that time. There were some differences, the accent being the main one, but you learn that people are all the same. It's what matters is what's inside. Yeah.
So once you'd finished school, what did you do? Were you academic, or were you more creative, or a mixture of both? What did you do then? What kind of jobs did you do?
Well, I guess that's a mixture of both academic and creative. I always did very well at school. But because I married young and my husband was in the RF, it was hard to get work. So most of my school friends went to university, but that wasn't really on the cards for me. You can't move around. You can't be a horse's wife, not in those days anyway, and go to university or hold down a career even. I mean, this was back in 1977 when we got married. Things were different then. So I did what I could. I went into admin to start with, and I went back into later on as well, but not quite my forte. Admin, I'm more a people person, but it was a job, and I did it to the best that I could. And I worked in a shop and did voluntary work. But I have 3 children, and So I was a stay-at-home mum for quite a long time. And when the boys were old enough to take care of themselves more, I went back to work and went into admin because I thought that's all I knew. But I made a decision that if I was going to do office work, it needed to be in a place that was meaningful to me, that I knew that the people there were going to be helping other people in some way. And I was very lucky. I managed to get a job with the youth service in Telford, which is, well, Wellington is part of Telford. And absolutely loved it. And in the daytime, there were lots of community groups using the building, and there were several buildings that I worked within. And so it wasn't very long, a matter of months, before I actually trained to be a part-time youth worker, a part-time youth and community development worker. And I did that for 10 years, just a few hours a week, really. And that was mainly working with young people with special needs. So I was aged 11 to 25 then. And from that sort of led to other things as well. It opened doors. And about 4 years later, I think I got a job with what was then Age Concern, it's now Age UK. And again, it was working in community throughout South Telford. And that was working with supporting isolated older people. So identifying the reasons why and trying to find ways to address that. So that was great. So I had the young people, I was still doing that. And then I was seeing older people, mostly people in their 90s or sometimes older, which is just amazing and lovely people. I also did it was only for a couple of terms, but again, just a few hours a week as a tutor with the Workers' Educational Association. So all those things, and from that, I was observing all the different agencies and the way they were working and what they're doing. And I thought, well, what I really want to do is help people with their health and help them in some way to get better. And so I went to university at the same time as doing these part-time jobs and looking after my family. And I studied health studies, so I was there for 6 years. But that's really when my health started to suffer. And my work, particularly the youth work, it raised memories of a particular incident. It was only a single incident when I was 9 that was very traumatic. And so I started re-experiencing that. And all of those things, it was just overwhelming. And my body felt the score. There's a famous book, The Body Knows the Score. My body really felt the score. And I ended up with, in the end, quite severe ME. And all of those things had to go by the by. I couldn't work, I couldn't study, I couldn't do anything much, really.
So you must have felt then that your life was over, as such as you knew it, with the ME, because that's very debilitating, isn't it? I mean, were you really bad with the ME?
I was in the end. It was a long, slow process with me. I mean, I could, when I thought about it, I could recognise the symptoms way back in my 20s, early 20s. I was the beginnings of it. I had these bouts of what everybody put down as, oh, it's just me and my allergies. And they were like flu-like symptoms, but absolute fatigue, and it would wipe me out for a few days. But over time, that became worse and worse, and it was just constant. So at my worst, at the end, just picking up a cup or a fork was difficult. It was really challenging, and I could walk about 300 yards or so, but any more than that, and I needed a wheelchair. So life was limiting, and there's loads of symptoms that anybody who experiences that, there's lots of symptoms, and yes, it is very debilitating. So I did reach a very low point. It was the lowest point in my life, and there was one, we talk about, we are a dark night of the soul, and there was one incident, one moment when I really felt that I didn't want to be here anymore. If this was like life was going to carry on, I didn't want this, and I couldn't see a way out. But that was actually a catalyst for change, because I saw something that reminded me of my family, and then I started thinking about them. I thought, no, you know, I have to make a choice. I either carry on as I am, I get worse, and I knew with ME that actually things could get much worse, because my physical and cognitive ability at its worst was about 30%. 25% are unable to get out of bed, and sometimes it's often tube fed. And I was going in that direction. So I made the choice. Well, I don't want to be there. I don't want to stay as I am. So I have to do something else instead. And I've been doing something else instead ever since.
So what was the something else instead? What was it that you discovered?
Well, initially it was something called the lightning process, and I'd heard about that a couple of years before. I'd also heard of tapping, the EFT, emotional freedom techniques. You mentioned I'm a trainer in that. Sometime before, but I discounted that and anything else pretty much. It just felt, oh, well, actually, I'll be open and honest. What I thought was a bunch of charlatans taking their money from vulnerable people. That was my attitude at the time. Oh, boy, was I wrong. So I went to, signed up for the lightning process, which is an NLP-based technique, and that was amazing. It made a huge difference in a short amount of time, physically. But I was re-experiencing this traumatic experience, and I thought, well, if am I gonna have to carry on doing this process every day forevermore in order to stay well when I have all this going on in my head as well? So I was very fortunate that the person who taught us the lightning process, there's a group of about 15 of us, introduced us to EFT. And I'd heard about it before, but discounted it. But it was amazing. We only did it for 15, 20 minutes as a way of coping with anxiety, is how he introduced it. And then travelling home from there, I was feeling very anxious. I was on a train, feeling very anxious. So I did this tapping. In for a penny, in for a pound, I may as well. It's better than feeling like this with my heart racing and everything else. And it worked. And then later on, I felt a little bit anxious, not as much as before, so I did it again, and it worked really well. So when I got home, I started using it. I thought, I need to find somebody to help me with this. I looked it up on the internet, and I couldn't find any practitioners in Shropshire then at all. They might have been hiding somewhere, but I couldn't find them. So I did a search, and I came across a chap called Carl Dawson, and I liked the look of his face. He had a nice smile. And he said he'd experienced fatigue in the past as well. So I thought, well, he gets me, he knows me. So I phoned him up. But he said he no longer did one-to-one sessions. He only did the training. So I thought, I'm going to have to go on the training then. That's what I did. I was very much in my, in a not a good emotional place that first day, and I kept re-experiencing this thing that had happened and other things. And he noticed, and he kindly stayed at the end of the day. After all that busy day's training, stayed at the end, did a one-to-one session with me and two other people actually who were on the course at the time. And it changed my life. He used an advanced application of EFT. It's EFT techniques with an S on the end that works very well with trauma. And it was amazing. So from that moment, and that was only about 20, 25 minutes, it was gone. So I know what happened. I can see it. I can think about it now if I choose to, but without the emotional feelings that I had about it before. It's just, it happened, and that's it. And more than that, actually, I could feel compassion for the person that that was so awful, because they must have experienced something really bad in their lives to have made them behave in that way. So it completely changed my way of thinking. And it was from that I just thought, I've got to do this. I need to learn more. And I'd done the training. I carried on studying more and more and more for months, as much as I could, anything I could learn more about it, practicing, doing my case studies so that I could, in my exams, so I could be a practitioner, and then just took it out there. So I still use EFT myself. I practice what I preach. This is what it's all about. I do walk my talk and everything else that I do. But I have a passion for enabling and empowering other people so that they can experience that change in themselves as well.
Wow. So your courses that you do on in EFT, are you doing them online at the moment, or have you stopped them due to COVID? How are you?
Well, I'm looking into it at the moment. The organisation I'm with, we've made the decision that we're not going to train online. There is another organisation which I'm also a member of that does, but the ideal is to train in person. And as long I'm holding out for the time being to train in person, and I think this looks like we've got a window over the next few months when I might be able to do that. So I'm just about to put a date in the diary actually, and that will be here in Wellington. I've got a lovely therapy room I'm sat in, and then there's a bigger room which is a training room as well. But I am going to do an introduction to EFT online, so that'll just be for 2 hours, so people can get a feel for it. And that's aimed really at people who work in the community. So for those, either they work for a voluntary organisation or they're a health or helping professional who works with organisations in the community. Because I want to make this accessible to everybody.
And this online workshop, this will be 2 hours. Will details of that be on your website?
They will be. It will be. Yes, of course. I'm just thinking. I was going to say it's not on there today, but this video I don't think will be going out. So yes, it will be on my website. So carolinerowling.com under the events section.
Okay, that's great. But not only do you do EFT, but you do laughter yoga as well, and HeartMaths, isn't it? You do?
I do. I love both of those. Now, laughter yoga, I hadn't heard of laughter yoga when I was unwell. Otherwise, I might have signed up for some workshops for that if I could have got there. But it was one of the first things that helped me was actually laughing. When I was upstairs in my room, lying in the dark with sunglasses on, I'd listen to the radio and there would be reruns of Round the Horn and Goon Show. And I realised that when I laughed, I felt a little bit better. It lifts your mood, but it can also help you physically as well. And then when I came across laughter yoga, wow, this is amazing. I've got to learn this. And from laughter yoga, I understood that you don't have to listen to jokes, anything. You laugh for no reason. You just make the sound of laughter and your body can't tell the difference between the fake laugh and the real laugh. And this is, that combined with breathing is really what laughter yoga is about. So I trained to do that quite a few years ago now, and share that where I can. And the HeartMath as well, that was something that came through working with a colleague in Bosnia, and when we were both volunteering with Healing Hands Network. And we put together a program, a From Stress to Strength program, that includes the HeartMath breathing, the laughter yoga, the EFT tapping, where we do it in a slightly different way than I would with one-to-one people. And we do that as a group, and there's a few other things in there as well. And so I'm still running that as well. That's with community projects, community groups. And it can make a huge difference in people's lives. So they're all things that the basis of them, that people can learn to do themselves. So it's about more than calming stress in the body. It's about calming that stress, coming back into balance, but changing how you feel emotionally as well. So.
Wow. And I know that you've done some great work with the Healing Hands Network, and you indeed went over to Bosnia to work with people who were, regardless of what side they were on or whatever, but they were all victims of war and suffered horrendous atrocities, male and female. So how did you find that experience? Because that would have been a big change from the comfort you know, of a house in Shropshire over to a war zone.
Oh,
Well, a past war zone.
oh, wow, it was amazing, moving, inspiring, and it was and very humbling. I think humbling is the biggest emotion you feel with it, because they're amazing to have experienced or having. And in Bosnia, we worked with mainly survivors of concentration camps. So then they weren't the big concentration camps of the Second World War, but they were concentration camps. So they were, it might be a school or a gym or a cattle shed where lots of people herded together, and all the terrible things that happened there. Also with Mothers of Srebrenica, and people who were in the siege in Sarajevo. And they're just amazing. So we were teaching them all these tools and techniques so they can make the changes themselves in their own lives. And having been a number of times now, I've been 5 times. Unfortunately, I've not been able to go the last 3 years, but for 5 years running, I was going just for a couple of weeks at a time. But I've had the privilege then of seeing some of them more than once. So they've come back. And the last time, actually, there was one lovely lady who came. And she'd been there the first time I went in 2010. So I had 1 year's break in the middle. So back in 2016, I think was the last time I went. And she came back, and I hadn't seen her in those years. And she walked through, and she was just so lovely. And she was saying, with a translator explaining, she said, well, if I feel depressed or I feel anxious, I just go into the garden and I do my tapping, she says, and then I feel better and I'm okay. And another lady, she loved the laughing, actually, most, I think, out of everything. And when she first came in, the first year we saw her, she was very distressed. And she shared that she hadn't smiled for 4 years. She stayed in her flat and only left if she really had to get food or go to the doctor's surgery or something like that. And the following year she came back to take part in the programme, and she walked in beaming from ear to ear and said, look, I'm still smiling. And she was telling a little bit about her past year and explained to the others about the programme and the effect it had had on her by using the techniques. I said, well, I laugh. Instead of my neighbours ask me why I'm always laughing, and my answer is, why wouldn't I laugh? And and she'd been sharing, like all of them, everybody, they all share with their friends, their neighbours, their families. There's one lady who is a nursery school teacher, and so she was sharing that with all the children in the school. So it's just amazing.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing that you did that and went over there, because I know it's done mainly at your own expense as well to go over there and help these people. And the Healing Hands Network do some tremendous work, both overseas and here in the UK, with victims of war, soldiers, and all sorts of people who have been affected, because that's a big change as well, for people to go through that, and the horrors and everything else. But it's having that inner strength. When at times when you've felt, fear, or there's been changes, has there anything, you did the tapping and the laughter yoga, and that helps you as well. But was there any books that you read that were inspiring, or any people or any sayings that you felt, oh, I can hold on to this? Or
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think the books, The Body Knows the Score, it's the one I mentioned before, has been really helpful. And I think that's a good one for people, anyone who's experienced, because it really explains that the connection between body and mind. And we know body, mind, energy, it's all connected. You can't work with one without working the other. And often actually, it's very helpful to address things that happened in the past. And there are ways of doing that are very gentle, that you don't you don't even have to talk about as well like EFT and advanced applications of EFT like matrix reimprinting, because you can transform the past or your feelings about the past without talking about it if you really don't want to, and that could be really helpful. But for some people there is just so much, it's just so overwhelming that before doing that, or maybe never doing that even, that it's helpful to work with the body first. And when you work on the body, it changes how you feel anyway, like our people in Bosnia. Who, well, Carl Dawson I mentioned, does inspire me. He's so generous in what he's developed and how he shares that. He's very quiet about it. He doesn't say how much he actually gives, but he does. And it's the thing with Gary Craig, when he first developed EFT, it was wanting to share it and give it to the world. So very generous with that. And most of us who are trans, probably all of us, carry on with that as well, the best that we can in sharing and enabling people to participate in the training so that they can go and share it. But most of all, it's our clients. And in my office at home, I've got photographs of some of the clients in Bosnia, some of the groups or groups together. And if there are times when I feel like giving up, because we all get those times. I mean, early with this whole COVID thing, it was really nice to potter around in my garden and not have to think about anything else for a while. But also at other times, I mean, I lost my father a few years ago. And it's tough, isn't it, when you lose someone close to you? But I just look at them and look at the changes that they've made for themselves and what they've survived, and how amazing they are. And I just, come on, we can do this. And it reminds me actually to practice what I preach, because I'm human, and the human condition is we're physically made that at times of high stress, we're going to not think to do the things that we know to do to help ourselves. But yeah, it's amazing. And all the lovely people, I mean, so privileged to meet so many amazing therapists in different ways. I had a small brush with cancer just over 12 months ago. It turned out to be, I was very lucky, caught it in the early stages. But I did my tapping, I did my breathing, which actually was great, wonderful way to lower your blood pressure when you're going in and out of theatre. It's great, they wish you through. But also some amazing sound therapists and access bars and crystal therapy. You know, I just, everybody I knew I called on and did swaps sometimes and everything. So there's a lot of amazing people around here.
Yeah, I think that you raised a very good point, is that as a therapist, regardless of what therapy you do, or you forget to treat yourself sometimes, because sometimes you just get so busy either thinking about other people, or you just get caught up in the just in life in general. But then you forget that you've got all these wonderful tools that you can use to help you get over difficult situations and maybe difficult thought processes. At the moment with COVID, there's a lot of people who's going to be going through and going through massive changes, such as losing their job or losing, their way of life, their salaries, maybe even losing their business or health, and in some case, maybe losing someone close to them and dear to them. Is there any advice that you would give those people going through that at the moment?
It's tough when you go through those times. There's no getting away from that. It's hard and it's painful. But what I will say is that having been at my lowest low and come out the other side and seen how other people have been able to do that too, that even if you can't change the situation around you, or feel that you can't change the situation, it is possible. It really is possible to change how you feel. And that's what resilience is. I mean, really, we're talking about resilience, aren't we? And resilience isn't about not going through all of that. We're made as humans to experience a wide range of emotions. And it's okay to feel sad and angry and frustrated and depressed and to grieve. All of those things we're made to. We're also made to be happy and relaxed and joyful and all of those things too. It's only becomes a problem when we're stuck in one place that's uncomfortable for us. And that's where I was 30 years ago. So reach out, ask for help, because there's no shame in feeling that way at all. You know, it's part of being human. It's what we are. We are designed to experience all those things. But you don't have to go through it alone. There are plenty of us out there who are willing to help. And there's lots of resources out there that often you can pick up for free to get you started. And then if you need help, reach out, just ask. It's there and you can do it. You really can. I'm proof of that. You can.
I think that's just marvellous, and I think it's a great reminder that, you know, there is no shame in asking for help, and it's okay to say that you're struggling or you've got difficulties or whatever else, and it's okay, you know, to acknowledge those and then try and find someone to help you. As you say, there's plenty of people around, and all I can say is thank you so much, Caroline, for coming on and talking with me and sharing how you've got through your journey and how, you know, what you do now has helped you through a really difficult phase. I think it's important, you know, that people do talk about what's helped them, because in doing that we help other people, don't we? And I say thank you so much. That's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.